Welcome to a brand new episode of the Bull Take Podcast. I'm Austin Wader. Alongside me, Austin Hill. Welcome back to this NFL edition of the Bull Take Podcast. If you haven't, go tune into our college football episode. The first playoff rankings came out. We break it all down, whether we think some spots are questionable for some teams. Plus, we talk about an amazing Saturday we got coming up, huge SEC games, and plus just the chaos in all the conferences. Austin, we talked about it. There's still double-digit teams alive for the Big 12 title.
Yeah, unbelievable kind of the way it's shaken out, but you wouldn't expect anything less from the Big 12 or from college football.
Good point. So make sure and go give that episode a watch or listen as it's available on YouTube or Spotify, whatever works for you. But this is our NFL episode here, so let's get it started and talk about what was the most important thing that occurred on November 5th, and that was the NFL trade deadline. Yes, a lot of great deals went down. I can't think of any. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm giving a little disrespect to the college football playoff. That's my
Yeah,
bad. That's my bad. Both equally important to the two biggest things on that day equally. Um, but nonetheless, there was a lot of deals that went down on Tuesday. So let's just dive into them. Real quick, I guess we'll summarize some of the deals that occurred beforehand. Obviously, there were the wide receiver deals for Devontae Adams, Amari Cooper, DeAndre Hopkins, some other minor deals that occurred. But as far as the one that I want to talk about that hurts the most, first, and that's Deontay Johnson getting traded from the Carolina Panthers to the Baltimore Ravens in exchange. I believe it was for a fifth or sixth round pick, if I'm correct. Yep, a 2025 sixth round pick. Yeah, this sucks because in case I've not told you all, have an autograph Deontay Johnson jersey from when he was a Pittsburgh Steeler. So that's the only reason I want to bring this one up, Austin. It's just really, really awkward staring at that thing now, watching him in a Ravens jersey.
yeah, and this adds another, potential speed threat to this offense. Maybe somebody who can break down the field. But really, I kind of, no disrespect to Deontay Johnson, I liked this offense kind of where it is right now. But I get you can never have enough playmakers on the outside.
I think it's safe to say so. Another deal that I want to talk about real quick before we get to the ones that occurred. That was the Vikings getting a deal for Cam Robinson from the Jacksonville Jaguars. Jaguars will receive a 2026 fourth round pick, and Vikings will receive a 2026 seventh rounder. And look, Vikings lost left tackle Christian Darrisaw to a season ending ACL injury against the Rams. They had to make this deal to get some help left tackle with them being as good as they are trying to fight for a playoff spot.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there. And this is a deal that can certainly help you out in the future. I like this deal for Jacksonville as well. They've invested a lot of money into some of those offensive linemen, and the offensive line has not been that great this year. It's time they need to find some money somewhere. And so I think resetting and trying to get this offensive line a little bit more youthful is probably a step in the right direction.
Absolutely. But now let's get to the deals that happened on trade deadline day. And the very first one, me and you had hinted at this since the Aiden Hutchinson injury occurred. We felt the Lions would go get a pass rusher. They acquire Zadarius Smith from the Cleveland Browns. The Browns will receive a 2025 fifth rounder and a 2026 sixth round pick for Zadarius Smith. Listen, just straight up, they needed some help pass rushing with Aiden Hutchinson being out. We talked about this a lot already.
Yeah, this makes sense. Look, really, it wasn't a matter of will they? It was when and who will the Lions go out and get to replace Aiden Hutchinson. This is a team that's hot. This is a team that's trying to ride the hot hand and ride basically this window that they have right now in the NFC North and in the NFC to potentially go to the Super Bowl. So they're trying to take advantage of that for as many seasons as possible. And it makes sense to go out and get a talented edge rusher to replace kind of the heart and soul of your defense.
Yeah, it definitely is. So my next trade is one that I just, to this point, I think it shows a point with this team. The Cowboys, who Jerry Jones, this was a report that came out before the trade came out, were acquiring a wide receiver that Jerry Jones had admired since his college days. So you're like, ooh, who's Jerry going to go out and get? That was Jonathan Mingo, who on the season has 12 catches for 121 yards through 9 games. But what makes this even crazier is what the Panthers got a fourth round pick from the Cowboys in this deal. And usually I would be like, fourth round is a good deal, but wholly overpaid by Jerry Jones is does this feel like a Hail Mary, Austin? It kind of feels like a Hail Mary.
Yeah, here's the thing I'll say. I don't hate Mingo to the Cowboys. Look, they need some help in their wide receiver core. Um, and the Panthers weren't really using Mingo. And what, he's only in his second year, so I don't think, the jury's out on whether he's going to be a good talented receiver, but like you said, this is an overpay. Mingo's probably worth a fifth round pick at most. And an unconditional fifth round pick. Maybe a conditional sixth round pick that can go up to a fifth round pick. Hopkins is worth was traded for a conditional fifth round pick that can become a fourth round pick. Mingo was a fourth round pick straight up. So I think this is an overpay, obviously, just by looking at that. Um, I think Jerry Jones is panicked. He's looking to try and improve this offense, get another weapon on offense, and he paid too much for a guy that's unproven. I like taking a chance on a young guy. I don't like giving up a fourth round pick for Jonathan Mingo, though I do hope the best for him in Dallas.
Yeah, we'll see what they can do. Obviously, there's more news coming out of Dallas. We'll talk about here a little bit later on. The next deal that occurred is obviously, I think everyone's safe to say, was the biggest deal that occurred on the day of the deadline. The Commanders going all in, acquiring Marshawn Lattimore from the New Orleans Saints. New Orleans is getting Washington's third and fourth round picks in this year's draft, as well as its own sixth round pick back from Washington from a previous trade that occurred. And Washington's also getting the Saints fifth rounder in this year's draft. Look, these are two teams going in completely opposite directions. Washington's clearly trying to go all in cash right now on this great run. And Marshawn Lattimore, once he gets healthy, of course, he's been dealing with injuries. Once he gets healthy, this is going to be a great get for the Washington Commanders.
Yeah, and unfortunately, you can tell that maybe the Saints accountant has retired, or maybe he's gotten a new job somewhere else, or maybe even he can't get them through these hula hoops because this isn't just about the Saints being bad and trying to get draft picks. This is about the Saints being bad, trying to get draft picks. And boy, oh boy, this offseason, they are going to have to figure out how they're going to pay this entire team. Yeah, they're in a massive pickle right now. And this was the beginning of that trying to save some money. Lattimore going is going to save them not a ton of money for comparatively to how much money they're over come this offseason. But it's going to be a start. I'm honestly surprised that we didn't see Kamara go. I think he's the biggest amount of money. I think he's the biggest cap hit with overall, like gross cap hit, when you factor in how much money the Saints are going to have to pay out still when he goes. I think the biggest gross cap hit is Alvin Kamara come next offseason. So I thought they would have gone ahead and gotten rid of him and cashed in on the value. But maybe it's because the last 2 weeks before haven't been his best, or the last week before hadn't really been his best. And so maybe they didn't get the value they wanted for him. But I am surprised that Kamara didn't go. But this is what we're going to see from the Saints. I think finally time has run out. I think finally they can't afford to pay everybody, and they've exhausted all the tricks. I think this offseason we're going to see a huge reset in New Orleans, especially since this team isn't even winning games now. It might not be worth any more of the financial tricks.
Yeah. If they still try to pull off financial tricks, then yeah, that franchise is just screwed. I got nothing else to add there. But yeah, great deal for Washington to get him, especially once he gets fully healthy. The next deal, after months and months and months of wondering what the Pittsburgh Steelers would do at the wide receiver position, I am pleased to announce that they finally have made an acquisition for a wide receiver, and that is Mike Williams from the New York Jets. The Jets receiving a 2025 fifth round pick for the services of Mike Williams. The Steelers are. Look, this deal makes a lot of sense for both sides. Let's just say that straight up. The Jets got Devontae Adams, Mike Williams, and Aaron weren't connecting really well there. The Steelers, let's face it, If Van Jefferson's your number two receiver, it's going to be hard to have success. Now you bring in Mike Williams. Um, yeah, this is something I think both sides needed to get done.
Yeah, I'm with you. The Jets look clearly after the whole Mike Williams debacle with him and Aaron Rodgers. You knew this was going to be how this went. Um, and for the Steelers, like you said, they needed a wide receiver too. This is a guy who they were in on during his free agency tour. And so now they get a chance at him within the same season.
Yeah, I can't wait to see what he does. I don't know if he'll play this week against the Commanders. We'll have to wait and see there. But a great get, and not the last get for the Pittsburgh Steelers at the trade deadline. They acquired another player, acquiring edge Preston Smith from the Green Bay Packers in exchange for a 2025 seventh round pick. And of course, it came out a day later that Preston Smith had actually requested a trade from Green Bay because of different defensive schemes they were doing that he wasn't really a part of, and he wanted to go somewhere else. Um, but you're talking about a Steelers defensive line that has Cam Hayward, TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, Nick Herbig, and now you add Preston Smith in with some depth there. If they can all stay healthy, Austin, is this the best defensive line or just edge rushing group that we've seen?
I think so. Kind of, to hint on what you're saying, I was surprised seeing this deal that Preston Smith was dealt at the deadline. I feel like he's a pretty important part of that Packers defense. But as you said, he requested a trade, and so that makes that situation make a little bit more sense. But yeah, this is a surprising move, but a big move for the Steelers to continue to improve what I again think is the best defense in the NFL.
Absolutely. So our next deal features this man, Chicago Bears, in a deal where the Bengals have acquired running back Khalil Herbert from Chicago. In exchange, Chicago is getting a 2025 seventh round pick there. And I mean, look, Herbert had basically been frozen out of the Bears offense pretty much. Let's just say that. That's the only thing I was going to say. That was my reasoning for the trade. I'll let you, your thoughts on the Bears dealing him to Cincinnati.
No, you're absolutely right. When we first brought in Khalil Herbert, he did a lot of special teams at Virginia Tech, and he was a speedy but still physical kind of guy. And he worked in his little role as like a secondary back, but we tried him as a lead back last year, and it wasn't a super great result. Um, he's just not nearly as effective. And now with DeAndre Swift in the backfield, it nullifies him even as a receiving back to be able to play. And obviously, Roshan Johnson is getting those power back carries, especially with the emergence he's really had this season as the power back. There just was no world where it made sense for Khalil Herbert to be on the field for the Bears. This is the right deal. I'm glad that we were able to cash in and get something for Khalil Herbert, taking advantage of a situation where Zach Moss, obviously, unfortunately, is hurt for the Bengals right now. And so they needed help in that receiving back department, somebody who can help them catching the football.
Yeah, absolutely. But also, you wonder with Cincinnati, obviously, um, the injuries to their running back room. I mean, obviously Zach Moss out indefinitely with his neck issue, and then you got Chase Brown who's been dealing kind of with a rib injury. It makes sense to get more depth in the running back room. And then the last deal of note from the deadline, the Baltimore Ravens again making a deal. They have acquired Tre'Davious White from the Los Angeles Rams. In exchange, the Rams are sending the Ravens a 2027 seventh round pick and Tre'Davious White, while the Ravens will send the Rams a 2026 seventh round pick. And listen, Tre'Davious White, we've talked about. He's a two-time Pro Bowler corner, but he has fallen out of defensive game plans and kind of fallen down the list some due to several injuries. But listen, there's been some injuries in that Ravens secondary the past couple of weeks. So getting some good depth there, I think, is something that's not a bad deal for them.
Yeah, and I think if you can get Tre'Davious White back into form, him and Marlon Humphrey could be one of the scariest cornerback duos in the NFL.
Yeah, I think so. But that's the main deals from the trade deadline. You already mentioned it. I was going to ask you this, but you already kind of mentioned it. Was there anyone you were surprised did not get dealt? You already said Alvin Kamara. Was there anyone besides Alvin Kamara that surprised you that they were still with their team at the deadline?
I'm not going to say surprised, but I thought maybe the Steelers would try to shop Justin Fields a little bit. And it felt like there was maybe nothing there. There are teams out there with, quarterback issues. Maybe the Browns. Look, there you wouldn't have to give up a ton for him. He's going to be a free agent after this year. I just thought maybe the Steelers kind of seem to be committed to Russell Wilson for the rest of the year. You're not going to get both of these guys are going to be free agents next year. Maybe a chance to clear something up and pick somebody up in the free agency on a 2-year deal. That way you'd have somebody else. I thought maybe a team like the Browns might zero in on finding a young guy like Justin Fields who maybe you could bring in on not such a big money, even though I like seeing Jameis Winston play for them. But nothing happened there. But I would say nobody more surprising to me than Kamara. But Justin Fields, I thought maybe we'd hear his name a little bit.
I think that's fair to say. Really, I don't have specific players. I'll just be honest with you. I am stunned the Texans did not make any moves for this O line.
Agreed.
This O line is going through terribly. There's several injuries on the O line. They needed help. If you watched that Jets game, you knew it was bad. And now they're playing a Lions team this week that just got a brand new, fresh pass rusher to go against. This O line, I feel like it needed to make a move if they wanted to compete truly in the AFC this year. But yeah, they did not do it. That really surprised me, especially with how they performed against the Jets on last Thursday. But now let's move to this week. I didn't say it because I want to save it after the trade deadline talk. Let's talk biggest winners and losers from this past week. Austin, let's start with the biggest loser. Who you got there?
I think this is easily the New Orleans Saints. Look, you started out 2-0. I feel like I've said the New Orleans Saints a lot this year, but you started out 2-0. You've now lost 7 in a row. You lost to the Panthers by a point, and it was such a devastating loss that Dennis Allen has lost his job. I think that this is probably low hanging fruit as the easiest, biggest loser of the week.
Yeah, I think so. My argument is obviously could be several teams. And I don't mean to be mean whenever I say this, Austin, but if I had to pick another one, I'd probably give it to the Chicago Bears. It
That's
just
fair.
was not a good performance. It was not good at all. Um, there's questions obviously about DJ Moore. We'll talk about more about that in a few minutes, probably. But yeah, it just was a rough performance for Chicago, back-to-back weeks of just kind of rough offensive performances there. But as far as biggest winner, who you got with this week?
I'm gonna stay in the AFC South, even though there are a couple teams I like. I'm gonna go with the Atlanta Falcons here. Look, we talked about it. This is a time for them to start taking advantage and pushing themselves into a lead in this division over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And while the Buccaneers, I almost made them my winner of the week just for how well they were able to fight with Kansas City. Um, but I like Atlanta here. They've taken advantage. They're beating teams like Dallas and, really pushing themselves up to the top of this division. And, one or two more weeks like this where they win and Tampa loses, they might seal this division well before the end of the season.
Yeah, it looking like it right now. I won't go with a specific team. I'll go with a specific player. I'm going to give it to Bryce Young for biggest winner. I'm just really happy he was able to get a win under his belt and just see a smile on the guy's face after a game for once in Carolina. So I was happy to see him get the win there for the Panthers. If I had to go with a team, honestly, I would probably have to say, obviously, you could make a case for the Detroit Lions to be there. Um, but honestly, I'm kind of with you on the Atlanta Falcons. I think Atlanta's win. Look, they got full control now in that NFC South. They're taking advantage of it, like we talked about. So yeah, those are definitely what I would consider our biggest winners. But now, before we get into the games, let's dive into the breaking news that came out this week. Multiple. First, the Saints after the loss to the Panthers. You hinted at it. Dennis Allen fired from New Orleans, and listen, I'll just be perfectly frank and honest. We all knew it was coming. It was just a matter of when. And the Panthers game sealed his fate. And also, if you want my opinion on it, it feels like this was literally just a placeholder after Sean Payton surprisingly retired. And they're like, Dennis, you be our coach. That's basically what it felt like. It never felt like to me that he was the true future coach for this New Orleans Saints team.
Yeah, I think you said it on Twitter, but it's a sentiment that we both share. This guy should have never been hired to be their head coach. I don't know what they saw in Dennis Allen. Like you said, maybe it was just panic with the way Sean Payton kind of just retired. But yeah, this was just not the. This was never the right move. It was pretty evident, I think, pretty much from the first game that this was just not going to be the right call. And it only took them 2.5 years to figure it out.
Yeah, only 2.5 years, only two and a half. But yeah, that was the big coaching change. Surprisingly, that and Robert Sala are the only two head coaches that have been fired to this point. Are you surprised by that with very little coaching fires up to this point in the season, especially with a lot of 2-7 football teams?
Yeah, well, I think some teams are competitive, and I think some teams are kind of embracing their situations right now. I think it just goes to show a level of trust, and the NFL has been trying to kind of deter this firing of head coaches in the middle of the season. You talk about, I can't remember the number it was a couple of years ago, but how much money the NFL teams total were paying coaches that were not coaching teams at all was insanely
Yeah.
stupid. So the education and kind of the awareness and maybe some secret backdoor punishments for firing head coaches has maybe been going on. Who knows? But I know that the NFL is trying to deter against those firings. So I think that probably whatever they're doing to put that in place is probably also helping a little bit. But I think it goes to show kind of the level of trust in teams and coaches, and maybe finally giving some guys a chance to work their way out of the tough situation that they've inherited.
Yeah. I think that's a fair point. I also think a lot, like you said, I think a lot of them are just kind of embracing where they're at this point. Some of them are in a rebuild, so they're not really worried about making a coaching change. They kind of want to build something. And some are just like, listen, let's just let them finish out the year. We'll figure it out after the season. The next big story, of course, comes about the Dallas Cowboys and the news that broke. Dak Prescott suffering a hamstring injury. Um, Supposedly it's not great for him. They said it was a lot worse than they expected it to be. He could be going on IR any day now, any minute now, really. It might even happen while we're doing this show. There's even some rumors that he might need season-ending surgery. It's not good for Dallas. Obviously, it's already been a really bad year for them and an all-in push by Jerry Jones and the Cowboys. Um, but yeah, not a good thing for Dallas to add along with that. And also CeeDee Lamb dealing with an AC joint injury too, so not looking good for him.
Yeah, Trey Lance season, I suppose. But yeah, this is just a bad run for the Cowboys and their sad attempt at an all-in season.
Yeah, I mean, just not it's not great there. And really, I mean, I think that seals their fate. And I mean, the NFC East is now a two-team race. Commanders and Eagles, who will play
Yeah.
on Thursday Night Football next week. What a game that'll be. And speaking of that, let's go ahead and dive into some of the games that occurred last week that I just want to touch on really quickly here. And that first one, the Ravens dominating the Broncos 41-10. Look, they absolutely destroyed them. Enough said there. We both said we kind of felt like Denver was a fraudulent 5-3 team, and this really showed it.
Yeah, this was just not a good ball game for Denver. Look, I thought that they've put some stuff together and they look better than I thought they were going to. But the Ravens are the Ravens, and especially after that loss to the Browns, I thought that they'd come out and try and make a statement in this one.
Yeah, and they most certainly did. Next one I want to harp on really quick. Detroit taking down Green Bay 24-14. Listen, this was an ugly football game. Let's just face that. The weather wasn't really great. It was overall just a rough game. But in the end, Detroit showed their strength, show how tough a football team they can be in their first outdoor game of the season. They went out and handled business in Green Bay in a game that truly was never close.
Yeah, the Lions are really starting to kind of assert their dominance in this NFC North. And it's just crazy as somebody who's been watching the NFC North as long as he's been watching football. The way that in my lifetime the Lions have really kind of turned it around from being kind of the sad sob story of the NFL. They just can never do anything right, and Sometimes it feels like the NFL's out to get them with the way some of these things go. And now you see them as one of the premier teams in the NFL. I just never thought this is something I'd see in my lifetime.
I don't think many people would say that too. 7-1, the Lions are their best start since. Any guess?
1995.
Off by about 40 years. 1956, the last time they got off to a 7-1 start.
Oh
I
my
mean,
God.
it's like you said, it's been a while since we've seen anything like this from the Lions.
That is unbelievable. I did not expect to hear that number come out of your mouth.
Yeah, 1956, the last time they had this is their best start since then. And then another great thrilling game that happened in the afternoon slate, the Rams taking down the Seahawks in overtime. Look, this was a great game for both sides, but the difference, Geno Smith, some costly errors in the red zone, and then going forward on fourth down overtime, not converting, and the Rams getting the win. And not only is this for the Rams now 4-4, a lot of O-line pieces are returning from IR that had been out since week one. So I mean, this Rams team just continues to play better and are getting stronger by the day.
Yeah, this was a phenomenal performance, putting themselves right back in the division. This is what I expected to happen. This team is rolling, and I just don't know if there's anybody that in the NFC West that's going to be able to stop them.
Ooh, are you calling the NFC West to the Rams right now?
I think so. Look, the 49ers have been so up and down with injury. I just don't know what to expect from them. I know McCaffrey's coming back, but the Rams are just playing great football, and they've got almost everybody back, and they just look, I don't know, unstoppable right now.
Yeah, I mean it's a fair argument. I'm not going to call anything in that NFC West though. I mean that's still all over the place. I mean Cardinals 5-4. Who knows? They've won three in a row. So we'll obviously wait and see there. And perfect transition to the Cardinals Bears game, 29-9. The Cardinals beating the Bears. Um, just a rough game. I'll let you share your thoughts on it.
Really, the offensive play calling makes me want to gouge my eyeballs out of my face. Look, people are going to be mad. I'm going to get this out of the way now. People are mad at DJ Moore for this walking off the field thing. I don't know what you want the guy to do. He pretty clearly rolled his ankle. In fact like that he takes himself off the field, doesn't make himself an option for Caleb Williams. Why? He just hurt his ankle. He's not going to be open, and if Caleb Williams thinks he's open and throws him a competitive ball, he's not going to be able to make the play. I don't know. People are saying it's something about Caleb. He doesn't like Caleb. Maybe he does. Maybe he doesn't. But the guy has been schemed out of the offense, as well as Cole Kmet, and it's just unbelievable. Cole Kmet and DJ Moore were the leading receivers last year with Justin Fields, who is per everybody in the Bears organization with the decisions they made a worse enough quarterback than Caleb Williams to make the move to commit to Caleb Williams. I like Caleb Williams. I've embraced that that's where this team's headed. But if those were your two best players, how are you not making them the focal point of your offensive scheme? And look, Eberflus, it feels like he's given up. I tried not to let him take the brunt of it last week. I let him off the hook, at least from my perspective. I didn't think what happened at the end of that Washington game was really entirely his fault. But this week was bad. Um, he got gashed on a run right before half, 50 or 60 something yard touchdown run that he just admitted at halftime in the interview he did not see coming. He just didn't even consider a run and called a defense that he pretty much said gave that up. And at least he took blame for it. He does have a history of not exactly taking blame for everything, but it's now like this time right now where we're experiencing where we should have done everything we could to get Ben Johnson or Cliff Kingsbury to be the head coach and offensive play caller for this team. We didn't, and we're paying the ultimate price for it right now, which is probably, I don't know. I think Caleb has made a lot of improvements, but if he's going to have to learn a new offense next year, which I don't know why we'd keep Shane Waldron after this year. Uh, this has been almost a wasted first year for Caleb Williams, as far as just learning an offense and being comfortable in that offense. I think he's made some improvements. I'm happy to see the future for Caleb Williams, and I'm not going to give up on Caleb Williams after 8 games. I'm not going to give up on Caleb Williams after 3 years. Uh, the rookie contract is 4 years, 5 years. You pick up the team option. I'm not going to be done with Caleb Williams until we get to that last year of the contract. I think he's a talented enough quarterback. I just think right now the decision to keep Eberflus and the decision to bring in Shane Waldron, just not obviously not paying off.
Yeah. Listen, there could be several arguments for that. I think that's fair. Listen, at the same time, this is again, it's not like y'all are playing bad teams these past couple of weeks. I mean, Cardinals and Commanders, let's give them their dues. You played some good football teams there. Um, but but I mean, it's just tough. The good news is it's 4-4. You still got at least nine more games to go this season, so plenty of time to figure out. So, nonetheless, let's move to the next game, which was Monday Night Football. You hinted at Tampa came so close to taking down the Chiefs in this game, 30-24. Chiefs won in overtime to move to 8-0. My question for you, Austin, before obviously we can talk about it. When Tampa scored that touchdown late in the fourth quarter, would you have gone for two?
Probably.
Yeah.
I think honestly the big thing for me is that you're not at 100%. You don't have your best players. I think that's a chance where it's like we're probably going to lose this game in overtime. Let's take a chance and try and get the job done.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was enough said. I mean, Tampa went out there, they played hard. The problem is they couldn't get it done. In the end, their defense couldn't get the stop in overtime that they needed. And the Chiefs won, moved to 8-0. And speaking of teams deciding to go for two late in the game, we have the first game of week 10 that occurred last night on Thursday Night Football. Ravens and the Bengals. The Ravens escaping with a 35-34 win. And it came down to look, this was a great game. It was a shootout. Bengals got up 21-7 early. Ravens scored three unanswered touchdowns. And then the Bengals go down, score in the final minute. And then the Bengals decide, look, let's go for two, try to get the win here. Couldn't get it done. But I'm just going to be dead honest with you. There were about four penalties that were missed on this play, both by the Bengals and the Ravens. I mean, nothing was called. Something should have been called there.
Yeah, but again, I like that mentality. I think I like it. I like that mentality more when you are the worst team, and I say that kind of hesitantly, not to say that the Bengals are a bad team, but comparatively, they're the worst team this year. And this was a chance to go out and steal a division game, steal a win just in general in the AFC. Uh, and I think that's the right call. Maybe you like Zach Taylor, maybe you don't out there, but I don't think you can deny that this was the right call to try and get one. Look, again, I think if they go to overtime against the Ravens, the Ravens might have been able to do what they did in an earlier overtime game this year: give Derrick Henry the ball every play and him walk them into game-winning territory.
Yeah, my issue with Zach Taylor is not to go in for two. That wasn't the problem. My
Yeah,
issue was they line up to go for two, and somehow, some way, Jamar Chase is left all alone, one on the left side. No one else for the Ravens is over there. No other Bengals players over there. Joe Burrow has his best receiver one with a chance to go for a 2-point conversion on the line. And they call a timeout. Are you kidding me? You're not going to get a better look than that.
yeah,
I don't get that. That's the part that infuriates me about Zach Taylor. He sees that as like, no, I don't want my best receiver
yeah.
one with the game on the line. Why would I want that? And then it leads to that 2-point conversion where there's multiple penalties and stuff. But I'm like, you had your chance on the first one. You had your chance on the first one and you didn't convert it.
Especially with a guy who had a career day last night.
Yeah, exactly. You would think it would have been automatic. But nonetheless, the Ravens win. Look, the Bengals are interesting. They're a 4-6 team, but their issue is not Joe Burrow in this offense. This offense has been carrying them to keeping close in these games. But this defense that we have talked about the last couple of years has just gotten progressively worse every single year since Joe Burrow's gotten there.
Yeah, and that has to do with kind of the not really the money that they've spent, but more the money they've been kind of putting back in their heads for Joe Burrow, for Jamar Chase, and a little bit they've spent on the offensive line that they haven't been able to pay the guys on defense that have been making the defense good. So they've been leaving every offseason. And the Bengals have not done a great job of replacing them.
No, they haven't. Nonetheless, 4-6. They still got to get a couple. They really honestly might need to win out if they want a chance. They can maybe afford one more loss, maybe, but they basically have to win out. The good news for them, their schedule in the second half of the year, besides playing the Steelers twice, gets a little bit easier for them.
Yeah.
So we'll wait and see there. But now let's get to some game picks this week in the NFL. A lot of good games that are going to go down. And let's start in the 12 o'clock slate, Austin. A couple of good games here. Our first one that I want to talk about is San Francisco taking on Tampa Bay. This is big. Christian McCaffrey expected to make his season debut in this game on Sunday in Tampa. Two things for you. How do you think this impacts the chances for the Niners going forward, but also who wins this game?
I think having McCaffrey back is obviously huge. He's a guy that is kind of the focal point of this offense, and he'll be so even more with Debo playing what feels like every other game, and with Brandon Ayuk out for the year. They really need somebody to kind of carry this offense, running the ball and catching it. And so it's perfect time for him to come back. But in this game, I like the Niners in this game. I think I'd like them in this game even without Christian McCaffrey. But with McCaffrey back, this offense should get to going against a defense that really couldn't make a stop at all last week against a high-powered offense in Kansas City. I just don't know if a Tampa right now, again, without all the pieces, I don't know if they're going to be able to keep up.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty fair. I'm probably going to go with San Francisco too. I just don't know. Like I said, I don't know if Tampa can keep up with the Niners getting McCaffrey back in that offense. Um, and I wonder about that Tampa defense. Like you said, I don't know what to think about them. They really haven't been that impressive this year either. The other game in the 12 o'clock window, and I'm honestly mad that it's in the 12 o'clock window when a certain game's the main afternoon game instead of this one. 6-2 Steelers, 7-2 Washington Commanders. Both teams have looked really good to start the season, made moves at the deadline to improve them. This is going to be a dandy, Austin.
Yeah, this is going to be quite the game. I'm going to lean Steelers in this one. I think a big thing that's going to help them is they had the bye week last week, if I'm correct.
Yeah.
And so coming in a little bit more fresh, this defense added another piece to defense with Preston Smith, like we talked about. I think that a fresh, good, talented defense. We saw how the Bears defense was kind of able to limit, for the most part, limit this Commanders offense till the very end of the game and keep it at a low scoring game. So we know that Jaden Daniels, while still talented, the good defenses can still affect him right now while he's still working his way up in the NFL. I think that big effort from the defense, able to keep the score low, and the Steelers thrive in those low scoring games.
I could break this down logistically, but they would just sound like whatever because I'm completely biased for obvious reasons. Listen, I'm gonna roll with the Steelers in this one. I am terrified specifically of the corner matchups with us against Terry McLaurin and those guys. I don't know how that'll go. Um, but I want to see us create pressure on Jane Daniels early. That's just my big thing. I want to see us get pressure on him early, make him uncomfortable early. The afternoon game, there is only one main afternoon game that I think is really worth, and I guess even semi worth picking. Um, Philly heading to Dallas. Obviously, that'll be on CBS in the afternoon. I don't get why it's the main afternoon game instead of Steelers Commanders, but I'm not going to complain. I'm not salty at all.
Yeah,
Um,
even though you
but
can.
nonetheless, the Eagles 6-2, Dallas, Cooper Rush expected to be the starter. Um, Everything seems to be going wrong for the Cowboys, but an upset of the Eagles could definitely turn some things around.
Yeah, I think that's pretty highly unlikely. So I'm going to go with the Eagles just simply because Cooper Rush is playing. I don't know. I might like this chances better if Trey Lance was playing. I don't understand Cooper Rush playing when I think Trey Lance is the better quarterback. Is that controversial to say?
Not really. Not really. I don't think so.
Yeah, that's
um,
opinion. I think when you can't even pick the right backup quarterback, I think that sets you back quite a bit.
yeah. Listen, everything is going the Eagles' way right now, Dallas, going the exact opposite way, which is why I will be the gutsy man and pick the Dallas Cowboys to win this game. Listen, you can hear me out on this. You can hear me out, or you choose
I
not
won't.
to.
La 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 la
Um,
la la.
yeah, I don't blame you. But listen, my thinking here is obviously Dallas has nothing to lose at this point. They're getting Micah Parsons back this week, from what I've heard. And for the Eagles, they are skating by in these games. Last week against Jacksonville, they are lucky that they were playing the Jaguars. Because let's be honest with you, Nick Sirianni is holding this team back. They could be even better than 6-2 right now if Nick Sirianni was not the head coach in Philadelphia. And I think his gutsiness, his boldness to continuously go for it on fourth down whenever a field goal or punting would be a better option could hurt him in this game, especially against the Cowboys. So you know what? Even if I'm wrong, I don't care. It's two idiot coaches. I guess I'll go with the idiot coach at home.
That's fair.
Then Sunday night football. This is a fun one. Two teams that are usually you would think not the most elite, but this is going to be a fun one. 7-1 Lions heading to Houston to take on the 6-3 Texans. Another great one here, Austin. Two franchises looking to continue their rise in their divisions and also just top of the NFL. Who do you like in this one?
Yeah, I mean, really, a fight at the top of the NFL right now. You talked about it, boy. The Lions. Look, I've already said what I need to say about them earlier. Just so impressive the way they've turned it around, how dominant they look this year. Look, it feels like in a lot of games this season, the Texans have not been able to get out of their own way. Feels like a lot of their own mistakes are causing these problems for them. So I'm going to go with the Lions. I feel like this is the team that right now is having more success. They're making less mistakes. And obviously, mistakes make it harder to win games. I'm going to give this one to the Lions, even though they're on the road.
I mean, listen, my whole thinking, I mean, I made my points. They didn't go out. Texans didn't make any upgrades to that O line. The Lions acquired Zadarius Smith. This isn't a bad first time to get him some action against a pretty bad O line. Yeah, I think and mainly the Lions really don't turn the ball over, and I think that's what Houston will need to do to win this game. So, yeah, I'm going to take the Lions to win this one. And then lastly, we'll pick Monday Night Football. I know it might not be the best records, but it's still two pretty solid teams now that they're both fully healthy again. The 2-6 Dolphins, the 4-4 Rams on Monday Night Football. An interesting one for both sides. Obviously, the Rams look to continue their impressive streak of wins. Miami just looking for something at this point. What do you see going on Monday night in LA?
I like the Rams in this game again. I think they're blazing hot. I think they've got everything going right for them. And with the Dolphins, like you said, they're just trying to get something going. I don't think this is the team you get something going against. Give me the Rams.
Okay. I am making my pick and I am making a bold prediction here. So I think the Rams will win the game. Obviously, I think the Rams will win the game. But what happens is Mike McDaniel will be fired after this game. That's my bold prediction. If they lose this game, I think Mike McDaniel will be fired from the Miami Dolphins.
Please, Bears need to instantly fire Eberflus and hire Mike McDaniel.
I don't. I feel like with their owner Stephen Ross, who I have mixed feelings about when it comes to him. Um, I feel like he would see this as a panic even more if Tua is healthy and they lose yet another game to a good team. I could see him making a panic move like that, like he did with Brian Flores in the past. So
Yeah,
um, that's where I'm going to lean there. But now let's get to our bet of the week. Of course, Chargers Browns under delivered for you this past week. The first half, it didn't look good for it, but they were able to get it. And if I'm correct, Austin, yours was a big spread again, right? It was the Ravens over the Broncos.
Ravens over the Broncos. Yeah, I think
Yep.
I went the way of the Ravens. I'm pretty sure it covered.
Yeah. Oh, 41-10. I feel like they might
Yeah,
have.
I can't imagine that the spread was bigger than that.
Yeah. But nonetheless, both of us got them right this past week. What do you got for NFL Week 10 for your bet of the week?
I was looking and I was a little bit shocked to see this, so I'm going to go ahead and tell you. I like the Cardinals money line against the Jets. They're at home. They're on a winning streak. They're playing better. I know talent wise, they're not necessarily the better team, but they're at home and they're the underdogs in this game. I guess because Aaron Rodgers and his buddies' team is just a favorite every game they play in. So I'm going to give Arizona a little nod here. I'd say Arizona money line, going to be some free money.
Yeah. Listen, there's free money there. And you did a money line pick. So you know what? I'll follow suit with a money line pick.
No,
Give me Steelers money line against the Washington Commanders. I don't care. I don't care. Frick
yes,
it.
sir. Bring it.
Yeah. My reasoning, I saw a stat that mainly gives me hope. Steelers are 7-0 straight up in their last 7 games following a bye week.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's giving me the confidence that they can win. So if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. You could always take Steelers under. You could take Chargers under. I mean, I basically give 3 plays because I mentioned those two every single week. So, but yeah, give me Steelers money line as the main one. You got 2 money line picks of money, parlay them together. You can win a good amount of money. I think it's safe to say.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe that's the key word. But that's going to do it for this episode of the Bold Take Podcast. Again, if you haven't, go watch our college football episode. Was a great one there. NFL this week, a lot of great games. We'll talk about it all next week. We'll see if there's any new coaching changes as well. We'll get you the latest on all of that. But that's going to do it for the Bold Take Podcast here. I'm Austin Wader. That's Austin Hill. We want to thank you for listening.